television anyway, and I'm not terribly supportive of that whole thing. I mean, I think it's a good thing in that I think, you know, the end is obviously very good. The means I find kind of sniveling, and so I really don't support it at all. I support the idea behind it.
If you'd been asked to play it, would you have played?
That's an impossible question. They wouldn't have asked us. We did a benefit in North Carolina, or a very similar kind of organization that sent all their money over and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I watched a bit of it today, and it was one of those things where the way they were talking and the way they were sort of conducting the whole concert, it was as if it had these sort of nightmare memories of Woodstock and how we could change the world and all of that. They even had Crosby, Stills and Nash playing and such.
Yeah, and well, I understand that all the bands that were participating were like selling their records between the sets and stuff like that. You know, they were talking about the new releases that they have out and stuff like that, which really doesn't have a thing to do with any kind of aid. You know.
The benefit you played, that was for Vietnam vets, I think, wasn't it?
That was another thing. This was for Ethiopia. I think it's called, I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah. Do you, I mean, when R.E.M. came up with the Murmur album and everything, you were immediately connected with people like the DBs and Mitch Easter and Love Tractor, etc. Do you feel a real strong kinship with those bands?
In a way, in that we all kind of came out of the same area, and there's a kind of general attitude in the South of it's a much slower kind of lifestyle that kind of nurtures a particular way of thinking and going about doing things. And musically, and I guess we have similarities. I think probably everybody was just real supportive of one another, you know.
I suppose another question would be, do you think maybe at times it was sort of unfair to lump all the groups together as if it was synonymous with a certain sound? Or
yeah, I can't really believe that we're being lumped together with bands like the Dream Syndicate and Husker Du and the Replacements and Jason and the Scorchers in England, all the English buses, putting all these American bands together like we're all creating the same kind of music, and you know, it's really very different.
Yeah, it obviously, you know, I think maybe why the bands get lumped together is there's a musical sensibility that perhaps links the bands.
I kind of maintain that the most important thing about all the bands that we're talking about, and ourselves included, is that's something that if there is any kind of a string tying everyone together into one group, it's that kind of post-punk attitude that, you know, that you can do it yourself.
Well, it's pretty evident, too, from listening to those bands that their early records came out around the same time, but every one of those groups has grown in their own way, has become more individual. How do you think you say have grown from the Murmur album to now, the third album?
I think that we're willing to take a couple more chances. I mean, we're a little bit more familiar with the studio. We're a little bit more familiar with the process of songwriting. And, you know, we pretty much learned how to write songs together, so we're kind of able to sniff each other out a little bit better than we used to be. It's been a very natural kind of progression, but...
Yeah, I listened to the Murmur album just before I came over here, and it sounded incredibly naive to me. It was a very innocent-sounding record.
Yeah, that's a word that kind of pops in my mind, too. I haven't listened to it in a long, long time, but the last time I did, I was kind of wincing a little bit, you know. I mean, I still like it a lot. I think it's probably a real good record, but it's a little bit too close to home, so...
At the time, were you sort of feeling your way, or was it just the thrill of making an entire album and just wanting to do anything that came into your heads or whatever?
Well, I think that we kind of got over that with Chronic Town, the first EP that came out. We'd never really been in the studio before, and we kind of threw in everything, including the Dogs and Crickets on that record. On Murmur, we were a little bit more relaxed about it. We were in a real studio rather than Mitch's drive-in, and you know, I think that We got a lot of shit. Sorry. We got a lot of stuff.
Okay. You don't know the show this is going on, so sorry.
We got all kinds of shit in the background on Murmur, but it was not so heavy-handed. You know, I think it was with a little bit of sensibility anyway.
Reckoning, I guess, was the first album that actually had, I guess, an R.E.M. sound to it, but also I mean, Murmur had a sound, but I think R.E.M. Reckoning had an identifiable, distinctive sound. And it also had an atmosphere about it.
To me, Reckoning is a real live record, which kind of contradicts everything we've always said about studio and live performances, that they're two completely different animals and should never be thrown in the same cage together. But I think Reckoning, I mean, what it boils down to is when we did that record, we pretty much locked ourselves in the studio for 12 days and just got as drunk as lords and didn't stop playing until the record was done. And listening to it, you can tell that, you know, the slow songs even have this just kind of intensity that the camera, to me, has got this, like, these hands grappling all throughout it, and you can tell that we were nervous wrecks when we were in there doing it.
Yeah. Well, but
that's good. You know, I think it's a good thing. You know, it kind of, in a way, it documents, you know, a week and a half of our lives that happened last year, and that's a way that I think records probably, if nothing else, they, like a photograph, they stop the band right there where they are, and they show you exactly what it was like then. The next week, you know, we would have recorded the album completely different the next week. I'm sure it wouldn't have sounded anything like it does.
Yeah, I know what you mean by intensity. But there's also like a really sort of a harnessed energy whereby the playing is energetic because you can feel it when you listen to the record, but it just sort of maintains its cool all the way through it, which is sort of a thing of the blues too, right? You know, the real good blues musicians have a cool about them, you know. But they can play real hot, if you know what I mean.
That's appreciated. I think talking about Reckoning, about the only track that really didn't work too well from that intense 12-day debacle was probably Little America. I think that recording Reconstruction, we were able to give ourselves more time in the studio, and so we were able to kind of remove ourselves from it a little bit, look at what we were doing, and if there was something that needed to be done again or needed to be improved on, we could do it. With Reckoning, we just, you know, crashed through everything, and I think Little America probably is a much better song live, because it's really a very strong song, and I think on the record it kind of dies a little.
I assume with Reconstruction that you went into England in an English studio, knowing that the band was established to a certain level and you knew what you could do in the studio.
Yeah, I mean, we knew our way around the studio. A lot of people have tried to kind of intimate that doing it in England was some kind of influence, good or bad. And I don't think it really made a difference, except that it was incredibly cold and the weather was horrible. You know, but outside of that.
Well, I'm an old yeah, sort of. I'm an old Joe Boyd fan, and I like the sounds he gets. They sound very natural, but they still sound very electric. Like he seems to, even though he's like recognized as a folk sort of producer, he still manages to get the feeling of electricity on a record.
Yeah, he's got this really kind of third sense where he's able to tell immediately whether or not a track is really connecting in the studio, and if it's not, he'll say everything was in time, everything sounded good, but it just didn't feel right. And you know, we would go in and try it again, and he would know immediately whether or not it felt right. He's got that kind of.
Were you like Peter had heard Joe Boyd stuff? Were you familiar with things like the Richard Thompson records and the Fairport records and stuff?
I knew about Nick Drake. A friend of mine years ago said that I was, you know, very much like him, but I'd never really listened to him. The only thing I'd really listened to was
the early Pink Floyd
and Shoot Out the Lights, the Richard and Linda Thompson record.
Peter also describes Reconstruction as a southern fairy tale. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think probably fable is a little bit better word than fairy tale, but
Well, hold on. Fable also implies that there's a moral too, like Aesop or the Tar Babies or anything like that.
yeah, I guess it does, doesn't it? I mean, I think every story probably has a moral to it. You know, you might have to dig a little bit for some of them, but situation comedies have morals, so fables probably should too. The record to me was kind of a collection, if you will, of all these different, incredibly colloquial, but kind of universal characters or sides to people that really worked together as kind of a body, you know. And I think the songs stand up on their own, but I think all together, without delving into anything like, I mean, it certainly wasn't a concept album. There was nothing like that behind it, but.
Well, I think somebody like Old Man Kenzie or Wendell G are probably people that I've known, like these sort of. Since I don't know the lyrics that well, I can only say they're always like mystery people on my block or something like that. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think thematically, kind of, you know, they all kind of, you could never put them all in one room. I think the walls would come crumbling down like Jericho, but.
Is it? I don't know if there's any way to describe R.E.M. or its sound exactly, except that perhaps like you're sort of like it's bucolic art rock, you know.
Well, that's a dumb term.
I mean, I don't know. It's just there's a certain pastoral sort of thing about the music. Yet it comes from people of a university background and university town.
What does that have to do with art rock? I mean, to me, art rock is like Genesis and Purple Hair.
I don't think. No.
I mean, what do you mean by art rock?
Well, there's a pretty strong creative or artistic sensibility at the music is sort of wrapped in or surrounded in, like, you know, what Howard Finster and I guess the packaging or the things that it's shrouded in.
That's probably my fault because I take care of all the visual stuff. You know, I do the T-shirts and the record covers and the videos and films and all that stuff. But I don't know. I guess just because lyrically we don't really deal with cars and girls and, you know, getting drunk and rock and roll and stuff like that. I mean, you know, that's really a dead horse to me. And maybe what I'm doing is a dead horse. You know, I don't know, but it's different anyway. And it's kind of a little bit closer to me than all that stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking of art rock in a prehistoric sense like the Genesis, and not at all. I was thinking more of a contemporary.
I mean, what would you consider a contemporary modern art rock band?
Talking Heads.
Talking Heads, probably. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. And they have a real strong sense of country in what they do as well, and of their country, or the roots of their music.
I'm not sure I could agree with that. I think maybe up to the second album they kind of had a real colloquial feeling to them. I mean, real local, and if you could really tell where they were coming from. After that,
they haven't gotten back to that with the new album.
I haven't heard it.
No. Okay.
I admire them a lot, though. I think that they're a very tremendous band. I liked them a whole lot when their first single came out, and then first album. I started hating them about the third album, and I didn't like them again until Burning Down the House came out, and I thought that was a tremendous record. You know.
Do you think there is a real sort of like pro-American feeling happening, like a real grassroots level, like that expresses itself in music and movies that's going on right now in the States? Not like in the sense of a reactionary America or a real conservative America, but just a sort of reevaluation of tradition and roots.
Well, I think there's probably a couple of sides to that. There's the Red Dawn side, and then there's the country, the river side. You know, one of them is this kind of Reaganistic, jingoistic, patriotic America that is pretty much a facade. The other one is this mythological America that doesn't really ever exist or doesn't exist. That we're probably dealing in the latter, I think. You know.
Yeah. Well, there seem to be a lot of bands dealing in the latter, like even True West, the band are going to open for you. There's a strong American Western sense of you know, in some of the things they do, and then there's that psychedelic overtones, etc.
I think any band that is going to really be true to themselves, that's coming out of America or even coming out of any Western country, probably has to take in all the influences that we have in our lives today. You know, it's not like 100 years ago where if you lived in Omaha, you knew Omaha and you knew nothing but Omaha, except what you read in books or maybe, you know, your grandfather told you. This, you know about everything in the world, or at least you know it's there if you don't know about it. And to ignore that influence is kind of being untrue to yourself.
To take that a little further, is it more honest then for bands to be doing this as opposed to taking the latest look and sound of whatever's happening out of England or Europe and trying to do it for their own marketplace in the States?
I'd like to think so, but, you know, again, you could look at almost any band doing this country or this Americana type thing that you're talking about and say, you know, it's nothing but an image or a facade. I mean, for ourselves, you know, we're pretty much doing what we know best, and we're doing it the way we want to. And
yeah, it seems very genuine to me. I mean, there's absolutely nothing you could actually hook the band to unless you really force the issue, which is to say, well, this band is, as you say, like Husker Du or the Replacements, or an American movement band or something. And that seems to be about as far as you could take it.
I think the only thing about the movement, you know, the American movement, as it's called or whatever, the only things that really do tie it together are the attitude and the fact that all these bands have kind of come out at the same time, and they're all influenced by the same people. You know, it's all like the New York middle 70s punk scene that inspired a lot of these people, and that does come out in the music somewhat, I guess.
I think the temptation is for critics, especially critics like myself, to say, well, this is obviously as a result of people sort of being as a reaction to all the high-tech music. Not to go to low-tech, but to take something that's more natural. And I don't, in your case, I don't really think your stuff seemed to have just formed, as I said, like naively or innocently, and just took shape from there.
Yeah, I'd like to think that we're more symbiotic. Is that the word? And it's anyway, it's certainly not a reaction to any other musical form that's going on today, and certainly not synthesizers. I mean, I would prefer to completely ignore that whole genre of music. You know, it doesn't apply to me at all. I don't dislike it. I just don't think it's been done very well. I don't dislike MTV for that matter. I just don't think it's been done very well. I think it can be done a lot better. You know.
Okay, well that's about it. I'll just let you go. I imagine you got to get back to the hotel before the gig. You gonna hang around? All right, what's this? I'm just talking to you. Talking to Michael.